Hi everyone, welcome to the Swedish Gamer Dudes. My name is Johan.
And I'm John.
And welcome to our first episode ever of our new podcast, where we'll be discussing video games, video game culture, and basically everything video games, right?
That is true. I've actually written like a general list of suggestions.
Yeah.
And here goes the pilot episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're two friends who are really passionate about video games. We play a lot of games. I'm more on the PS5, Switch kind of guy. You have all the consoles.
I would roughly say no, even though that I do have should we say the majority?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty much a PS5 kind of guy. I do have a Windows 10 computer, gaming computer.
Yeah.
And the Switch. So I would pretty much say the same.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. And you're also a collector of video games and like older games and consoles as well. You have a big collection of.
Yeah, that is pretty much true because ever since childhood, I remember that I lived in a household with a couple of siblings, and mother was there, and my mother's husband was there. We shared this house, and we only had one gaming console, which was the NES. And I was envious of other people having both the NES and the SNES at the time.
Yeah.
And I wanted all of it, and I missed so many masterpieces released, that I just want to make up for the ones I never played as a kid.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, same for me. The first console, it wasn't a console, but my first gaming experience was my parents getting me a Commodore 64 for Christmas, when I was 6 or 7 or something like that. Yeah. This old computer that you had cassette tapes for games and stuff like that. But it was enough to spark my interest for gaming, and I still remember when me and my brother, we saved up our money and we bought the first Nintendo console, the NES, and played Super Mario for the first time, those classics. And yeah, I've been in love with video games since then, absolutely. Had a huge NES library, Legend of Zelda, all those classic, Metroid, and yeah, so many fun memories. And also then continuing up with Super Nintendo, and every time there came out a new console, we had to buy it. We had to save our money to get the new console, and yeah, it's a fun hobby, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. When I was a kid, I remembered I really fell behind in school, homeworks and stuff, due to that. Pretty much everything that was in my mind was video games, and pretty much everything else just didn't spark my interest. My Swedish speaking abilities as a kid was really falling behind, but American English, being someone that was pretty much always there in video game cultures, movies and stuff like that, I found that being super interesting because it sounded cool.
Yeah.
So I remembered I was so into video games and hated pretty much everything else. So we had an NES, and when I was a kid, and early on at my father's place, given the fact that my mother and my father was divorced since I was a very, very young kid, he gave me a Sega Master System 2. So I remembered I got to play a couple of video games, but we never bought any video games usually at my mother's place, so I pretty much borrowed everything that I could.
Yeah.
And then the next console that I got after that was actually the Nintendo 64 when I was in 5th grade, I believe it was, Mario 64 and GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Which I shared with a family member. But yeah, that's the general introduction story.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, and today, video games is such a big part of our culture today. It's more and more people like us growing up in the 80s, and now we're getting older. And the technology, you can have such realistic graphics today. You can create these worlds in a completely different way. And it's very cool to have been there in the beginning and follow the evolution of games and what's possible today. And you have those milestones, I think, that pushes the boundaries for what was possible at the time. I get it now. We have we don't need this anymore, and the world is maybe more open in a video game or whatever. But yeah, I can remember those games that have been very important to me, when they were released. And
which ones? Was there a specific video game that really meant the most to you as a child gamer?
Yeah, I would say like the biggest like shock factor for me, I think, was when I played Ocarina of Time for the first time on the Nintendo 64. And
me too.
Yeah, it was like it stopped being like a video game for me and more like art or something. It was insane because it really felt like you were experience another world, like you travel to another world, and these graphics, and I mean today it has aged, of course, the graphics, but at the time it felt so real, like stepping out on Hyrule fields for the first time, and you see the sun is setting and it's going into night, and this day and night cycle and the sound effects, and like I've never experienced that with a game before. That was a really big moment, I remember. And but I mean I loved the NES and SNES before that as well, of course, with Super Mario and like A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. I really love that, the setup for that world as well, and I know that's still many favorite Zelda game, you know. But for me, like taking that step into 3D with Ocarina of Time, I will never forget that. That was a really big moment. I remember I gathered some friends, and we were at my dad's place, and we played like in the basement, this typical, you know, playing video games in your parents' basements. But yeah, it was a very special moment with this Ocarina of Time, because it really pushed the boundaries for what was possible with gaming technology, I think. And this,
yeah, definitely,
yeah. So that's my strongest memory of those. Yeah, early games.
Oh yeah. I definitely remember when the Nintendo 64 was pretty much amongst the New World consoles that you can have as a gamer, and you know, like as a non-gamer, of course, just being like someone who wanted to get into video games, or you were already into video games, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember, you know, Ocarina of Time being one of those milestones in my childhood where I just felt like this is so big. There's just more than just a game. I felt like I cared about the world.
Yeah.
I felt like I cared about the characters. I loved the music.
Oh,
everything
yes.
felt so amusing, immersive.
Yeah.
Like it felt like, you know, it pretty much blurred out the lines between reality and fiction.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, it actually made me feel things.
Yeah.
And I love the music. I still have Zora's Domain as my alarm clock in the morning.
Oh, nice. Nice. Oh, no, but the music by Koji Kondo, as you say, was really breathtaking. And I mean, just the overall theme, like the name Ocarina of Time, and you have an ocarina in the game, and you can use it as an instrument and play all kinds of music, not just the songs that you're required to play in the game. And I remember I saw some guide on the internet, and I learned to play the Simpson theme from the Simpson TV show on the ocarina.
Oh.
And it was so cool that you can do that, you know, in that like old game, but you had this instrument in it, and you can use it however you want. And such a cool, but I can absolutely agree with you, like it feels so real. It feels like, it really stood out, Ocarina of Time, when it came out. And it's still, I think, when you see lists over like the best video games ever and like voting on the best game, usually Ocarina of Time is still number one, or in the top 5 at least. It's still very fondly remembered, I think, and still a classic. And you played, I didn't play it on the 3DS, but you played the 3DS version as well.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So, like, I remembered as I was younger, I remembered I never owned the game myself on the Nintendo 64, but I did have a few friends who had it.
Yeah.
So I borrowed it from them, and I remembered I get to keep the save file to, you know, just borrow it again from them and to play from where I left off last time. And then years later, back in, was it 2011, I believe, I had myself this Nintendo 3DS, and I got myself Ocarina of Time, the 3D version, on that console, and there was enhanced graphics, at least that is what I would say. The controls felt like, you know, it worked, but it wasn't really as comfortable as with the Nintendo 64 controller. But it was just like, it was taken to the next level, because I specifically remembered that ever since this game was new, the original, I had that feeling that I want to be able to play this portably, not being hooked up, you know, to a TV,
sure,
on a traditional console, but having it as a portable experience, which was finally possible by the time 2011. and it was just like living the dream that I could finally just re-experience the game as if it would have been the first time.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's really cool. I think that's a very important role for like remakes in today's video game landscape. That like they're well made. Like the last couple of weeks, I've been really enjoying the remake of Metroid Prime, for example, on the Switch. Yes. And I think that's a very cool example of, because they have gone back to the game and like the graphics looks better and the lighting looks much better in the rooms and everything, much more like moody feeling in the game. But it's like when you play the game when it first came out, I was blown away by it, and I remember it looked very good like on the GameCube. But you can be fooled by the memory you have, like, oh, it looks so good, and I think it still does, But usually when you go back, maybe it doesn't look as good as you remember. But the remake is like a version that you remember how it was when it came out, like that quality. You have it now in the more modern graphics, but it's so cool. And I think that's one example of a very well-made remake that you just... do something with the graphic, make it look a little bit newer, fresher, maybe refine the controls a little bit, more comfortable with the steering and stuff. So it's a good way to keep the classics going as well, I think. I think it's good for Nintendo to release more of these classic games in remakes. And as you say, it would be cool to have that version of Ocarina of Time on the Switch as well, like 3DS version, and
of course
more newer graphics.
That would be like amazing to even have like a remake. Let's say you would have the Nintendo 64 version, given the fact that you're played on one screen instead of two.
Yeah.
And like if you would have it on the Switch, modernize the graphics and just keep the essential game being the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But of course, I feel like it would just be so amazing for to have fans of the newer generation, so to speak, to experience these old games, but just give them an overhaul with the graphics and maybe the sound to make it meet the today's standards, so they can that they can enjoy these games as if these games would have been new and not just remakes or remastered versions.
I completely understand how you mean. And I think, as I said, this Metroid Prime got that treatment last week. Because I see online that so many people have found Metroid now that never... some of the bigger names on Twitter and Twitch gamers, like, I never played Metroid before, but I tried this, and now I own like every Metroid game, and I like finished 4 of them, like that.
Oh yeah.
And it's so cool that people can rediscover it, and for that to happen, to have a really good remake, you have to have that so you can hook the newer audience as well, I think. And so it's cool to see. It really deserves it. Metroid was, and I think Zelda should have more remakes. That would be cool.
Zelda they definitely need that. I really feel like, one of those games that it would have been easier for me to go back to, given the fact that Zelda 1 on the NES. I never really played that game. I finished it once, but that was through the Nintendo Switch Online app, through emulation, but I felt like I would never have really given myself a honest chance to play through the game without the save states. But back in the day, that game was just too hard, and I was lost in this open world, not knowing where to go and what to do. But now, when I played this a couple of months ago, I felt like, okay, I definitely understand how this series took off as a masterpiece. Now, of course, it's not my favorite in the series, but it's still a very good game.
Yeah.
But the graphics, I felt like it was a little bit, off-putting, given the fact that it was an 8-bit game.
Yeah.
And it definitely needs just a visual overhaul. Not the perspective. It can still be like from above, but like that.
Yeah.
But just, make the textures a little bit more realistic, a little bit more smoother, instead of blocky.
Yes. Yeah, because it's important to, as we say, like preserve the games, and we have this, as you say, on Switch, the online versions. Now you can play online if you subscribe to their online servers, but it's not like with movies, for example, you can have it on the VHS, the old ones, and then DVD, Blu-ray, and so on. But games can get stuck in a console era and maybe not re-release for many years, you know. And I think it would be cool to have more game developers like also re-releases games more often to different consoles. Now it's more common that you can play the same game between different consoles like PS4 and PS5, for example. But some games just get lost in time, you know, on a specific console. And
that is so true.
Yeah, and I think it's sad because you have this really classic, and that's why I was so excited for Metroid Prime, because I loved it on GameCube, but that was like 20 years ago. Now finally it's on a more advanced system. You have it on the Wii as well, but now more on Switch, which have more players, you know. But and I think it should be more common to like that video game developers want to preserve their games to the next console generation as well, because some masterpieces just get lost, and it's sad.
Yeah, exactly. That is so sad that happens, but it's the harsh truth of things. Like I feel like, you know, it's kind of sad that not many people know. I'm not going to really dive into the harsh details of this, given the fact that, you know, you have these old consoles like the NES, where it's like if you hook it up to a TV, if you don't really do anything to the machine itself, or, you know, go through emulation, you can only hook it up to anything that has, is it a satellite cable that is called, or something like that?
Yeah.
Or F connector, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
Or the composite cables. And since modern TVs usually don't have composite, but if you would get yourself an adapter, it looks horrible, and it plays horrible. But I feel like, you know, it's just so sad that some of these masterpieces, like I remember a couple of months ago, I played the PlayStation 1 classic, Adventures of Alondra.
That's a classic, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the game was a masterpiece, and I was so happy that I played through it, but I was so close to not go, play it, because I just felt like, the PlayStation 1 for me is really not that much of a nostalgia factor.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that I gave it a chance, because it felt like, you know, it was a Super Nintendo game with some visual enhancements, for, you know, visual effects and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it just felt amazing, and I just wish that more people should, you know, have a chance to experience these games that might not have been something that they played as children, or, you know, at all.
Yeah, absolutely. You have played many Xbox games as well. You have more. I currently don't own an Xbox, but the way I figure with the service they have on Xbox with Game Pass and stuff, my understanding is that they have many classic games on the Xbox that go further back. So you have a greater library of older games on the Xbox that you can return to and play on the newer version, like Xbox Series X, for example, instead.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I think Xbox is more in the front runner with that, having more really.
And it's just so amazing that, as you mentioned, Game Pass, I really feel like, you know, it's a very, very great service. And then we have the Xbox backwards compatibility program, which generally means that, you know, you can play Xbox games that reaches back to the first generation of Xbox.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And I just feel like that is so amazing. Like, you know, one of the favorite games I've ever had, you know, except for Zelda Ocarina of Time, I had Ninja Gaiden, you know, the reboot game exclusive to the Xbox for a while.
Yes.
That game was a masterpiece for me. I just love that game, like everything about it.
Yeah.
And now that you can still play it on the Xbox Series X or Windows 10 for that matter, like a computer, with enhanced graphics and a higher frame rate, perhaps, you know, that makes it even better.
Yeah.
And it's just so amazing with Xbox that they've managed to, preserve it within their own ecosystem.
Yeah.
In certain ways that might have yet to be created in their own ways when it comes to PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's super cool, and I think I was relieved as a PlayStation owner that when I read about PS5 and they say, oh, it's backwards compatibility, you can play all the games on it, and I think, oh, finally, because between PlayStation 3 and 4 you couldn't play games like that, and it's they always released a PS4 version or something like that. But it's so obvious that of course you should be able to play it on the new console as well. I was very pleased with that, and yeah, I wish, as I said, Nintendo had more of that way of thinking about their older games. They have their service now where you can, pay, but you have a very limited, I think, library, like we talked about Ocarina of Time and all these classics on Nintendo 64. Now, last week we got Game Boy and Game Boy Advance, and it looks great on the Switch. But I think still they're very limited in the library of games. They should release way more games, and I think, and of course they're old games. They're licensing issues, who hold the rights and so on. Sure, but I think at the same time Nintendo could put in a little bit more effort to release more of the classic games on these virtual consoles.
Yeah, they definitely could. It always feels like they're holding, the gamers back from, accessing these games in the modern era of gaming. And I kind of understand mainly, of course, when they don't really have the rights to republish a game digitally. But sometimes when it comes to certain games that nothing really comes to mind specifically right now, but games that are like a really old game that should have been on this Nintendo Switch Online service, but it's not there now. That surprises me sometimes.
Yeah, really, really, really strange sometimes. And we finally got back GoldenEye. GoldenEye for Nintendo 64 is also one of those milestones for me when I played it for the first time on the Nintendo 64 when I was 12, 13 years old or something like that. But it really stuck with me, and it actually sparked my interest for the Bond movies as well. It had this symbiotic effect in a way. But you really feel like Bond, like this secret agent sneaking around, and at the time the graphics were really cool, I think, and it was still every level felt like a little bit of a sandbox game. You could have different possibilities, and some of them had larger open areas, and I think that was really cool for the time. And finally we got it now a couple of weeks ago, and it was nice to return to it and play it again. And it's still a little bit minimum effort, I think, for a remaster. I would prefer a more like that, maybe with the controls and the graphics maybe a little bit. But at the same time it's nice to have it back, and on the Switch you can play it everywhere, and just taking up traveling, and you can play on the train, on the bus, wherever you're traveling. It's such a great feeling. So I hope Nintendo comes back to it. And also, maybe we have some GameCube games. I don't know if it will happen, but I think on the Virtual Console, if they would release one of my favorite racing games, F-Zero, that's on the GameCube. I would really love that version as well online. But they still haven't released GameCube games for this Virtual Console. But just all the possibilities, and if you want people to pay that sum for a year, you should have this more consistent library and plenty more games, I think.
Of course. I really think that I would even think that bring Virtual Console back as a concept for the Switch, and not just Nintendo Switch Online, but let it be complementary. So I feel like if they would re-release the Zelda Wind Waker, which would be the Wii U version with the HD graphics that just looks amazing. And just have it on the Switch, that would be so amazing alongside Twilight Princess.
Oh yes.
So Ocarina of Time.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like having them, being able to play them offline, because the online experience, with the Nintendo Switch Online service, you pretty much need an internet connection to verify that you are a paying member. And that's a little bit annoying to me, but because it always feels like, okay, you need to access the Wi-Fi, so then you can validate that you're a paying member, and then you can play the game. But it's I love to play it online, because no matter if I'm on a train without a Wi-Fi, I can still play the games that I want to, because all I need is this specific cartridge, or the download file from eShop.
No, I completely understand. And you also have the risk of if it's only digital, it's only on their service. You also have the risk of them just taking the game away. It's just for a couple of months. Nintendo released, was it last year? They released this Mario collection, or 2 years
Mario
ago.
3D All Stars.
Yeah, exactly. And you had like Nintendo 64 game, and you have Sunshine and Galaxy, the first Galaxy.
Sure.
And it was only online for a couple of months, I
I
think.
believe it was like 6 months from the announcement.
Yeah, and now it's gone. Like, and I got it because I love the Mario games. But I mean, for people who maybe, I can't afford it now, or like, I mean, it's so, why do that? It's such a strange, I think, business model to just take away the games afterwards. And
it feels so weird, almost like by now it almost feels like it's a Nintendo move that we want to find ways to make more money out of this.
Yeah,
and just feels kind of weird because wouldn't it gain more profit if they would have kept it available to purchase it from the eShop?
Yeah.
Well, not really limitize how long this is available for purchasing.
Yeah.
So that was very weird.
Yeah, that's a strange one. I think
since
it's the only time they've done it right.
They might have done that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
It's really kind of weird.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, getting back to Masterpiece Games.
Yeah, sure.
The Final Fantasy series.
Oh yeah.
Which one is your favorite amongst those?
Oh yeah, I know the easy answer is always 7, but it's like, but I really love number 10, Final Fantasy X, with Tidus and Yuna. But I remember when they released Final Fantasy VII for the first time, and it was also like this big moment in gaming that you could have this, amazing storytelling and this cool role-playing mechanics, and at the same time you have this presentation with the full motion video sequences, for the story, and the amazing music by Nobuo Uematsu. And it was a huge cultural thing when the 7 was released, and I still remember that as being very, very impressive for the time. And I really like 7 still, and we had a remake a couple of years ago as well, a part of the whole story. And it was such an amazing thing to go back to that world with those more realistic graphics, and it felt like coming home in a way, because I was so used to that 7 world, playing the remake for the first time. But then they made some changes to the story, not spoiling anything here, but they're changing something with the story that I really was a big fan of in the remake.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. I definitely agree.
Yeah. So I still prefer the original there, and I really love 6 as well, with because so much of the great things in 7 starts in 6 almost, the way it's structured with the story and like music and the characters and just the way their approach to the story-based game. But 6 is also one of my absolute favorite soundtracks for any game. Final Fantasy 6 has such a good soundtrack. And memorable villains as well. We have, of course, Sephiroth in Final Fantasy 7. 6 has Kefka, this mad clown figure, and he's just totally crazy. Very good villain as well. So it's hard to pick favorite like that, but I must say when I play number 10, not counting the sequel, just the first game, I think it's a very emotional game, especially at the end. And it was the first Final Fantasy game with voice acting as well, so you get to know the characters in a different way. But that stands out for me. But I also like 8, I think, is good, but it has a very special combat system, and you had to draw the magic, and I had so much grinding and stuff. I just I completed it once, but after that I'm done. I
definitely feel the same way. It was tedious.
Yeah. And then number 9, I really love number 9. It's more like fantasy fairy tale style in a way. Also great music. I know for some reason people complain on the soundtrack on number 9, but I think it's one of Uematsu's greatest works. It has so many great musical themes, but it also had more standard story. I know the story was a little bit forgetful in number 9, I think. But 10 for me was the last of the truly great ones. Then we got into online, and number 12 I wasn't very fond of. No. 13 got halfway through it, I think. I didn't like the style, with the story, and it lost its way. I don't think they're same. I think number 10 was the last one of the same, core developers, and So you notice that shift in the upcoming games.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to number 16 now, who is going to release. It's this year, right? I think.
Yeah, I do believe in the summer, right?
Yeah, I think in the summer. Yeah, and it looks like back to this more fantasy style, and also a little bit.
Medieval times.
Yeah, type like and violent, like a little bit Game of Thrones feeling I get from it. But I think it's a cool. To try something new, because after 7 it feels like it was also very much this fantasy sci-fi world, and it's cool to go back to the more basic of medieval, as you said, like this fantasy setting. So I'm really looking forward to number 16 this year. I think it looks great from that trailer.
Oh yeah, it looks phenomenal.
Yeah,
I've only seen a handful of trailers, but it looks amazing. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. Which favorites do you have in the Final Fantasy series?
Well, I would say, like, for a long time I've been thinking that I played through the original Final Fantasy VII back in 2020, and this was in 2019. So I played through it from July until November that year, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But I just felt like back in 2020 when we got the remake, there was something about that combat system that almost reminded me of how real-time kind of battle gameplay that I would have from the Ninja Gaiden game, and therefore now I'm thinking more like, maybe I like the remake more.
Yeah.
People are going to be upset of that, but that's pretty much how I feel. So
but it's cool. I mean, because I also really like that more free-flowing combat in the remake. The only problem I had with the remake was the changes in the story, basically. But
for me too, I guess.
Yeah. But what was so cool with the remake was also that you get more, because you have these actors who play the characters. It feels so much more alive, and the characters really feel like real characters in a different way, I think, and compared to the original. It's very well made original, of course, but when you have actors and you have more scenes, they added some stuff to the characters and the backstory and expanded on it, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. It feels way more alive, these characters and the world and everything. So story changes aside, I think the other parts that's coming out, I think next year we have the part 2, right?
Yeah, the Rebirth. It's going to be called the chapter number 2.
I think so. I think so. Yeah. No, but it will be cool to go back, and I hope they don't change too much. But seeing Cloud, in that graphics, and Tifa, Barrett, and Aerith, and it was so amazing to see in those graphics. And I also like the movie Advent Children, based on Final Fantasy VII story, as a continuation. But today, like especially on the PlayStation 5, on the newer consoles, the graphics, the real-time graphics are better than the animated movie. And I remember when the movie came out, like, oh, this is the best thing ever, like that. It looks so good. I thought, games will never look that good. And now, it looks better today. And it's so cool that they're... so I mean, I can complain about story changes, but at the same time, so much love has gone into that remake, and it looks good. And speaking of the music, Uematsu's themes, their remixes in really good ways. The boss music, or the Iris theme, or Sephiroth's theme, or Genova, such good versions on that remake soundtrack. You can find it on Spotify, and it's really, really good. So I have a complex relations with the remake of Seven, but I have completed it twice, and I was more open to this changes the second time I played it, actually. But it's cool for you. I mean, going back to it much later than, you don't have that nostalgia glasses that some of us have that maybe grow up. Yeah, so you can be more objective to it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And, turn-based combat, I would say, like, I started getting into those kind of genre of games pretty late on. I remember I had the Game Boy. My little brother had a Game Boy Advance SP, and we got ourselves Pokemon games. I remember I first had Red, and he had Pikachu, Pokemon Pikachu, Yellow, and then later on, Pokemon Sapphire, and he had Gold, and it was so great to trade amongst one another. But the battling system with turn-based combat, it really made sense to me. I had limited English skills, given the the reading and all that, understanding what happened in the game.
Yeah,
but it just you had to be like patient to really, read through what happened and then wait for the animation to happen and then you can progress in the battle. But I really got into it because I was so used to real-time fighting that it almost felt like, strategy games, it almost reminded me of that. And I didn't really have the patience for actual strategy games like, Age of Empires.
Yeah, sure. No, me neither. I've never been that big on strategy games myself, but that's also because I don't have... I've never really had a good, gaming PC. It's usually a PC sort of thing, strategy games. But yeah, and I can relate to that. It's I remember trying, like, speaking of Final Fantasy, like the old ones, and this just waiting, and I wanted to, and then attack, and if I wanted to use magic, but just waiting and get hit by an enemy. I couldn't do anything about it, and I was more used to Zelda, the style of game, like that. So I want to move my characters like that, and now today it's cool to play it like more strategically. Those older Final Fantasy games, I think. No, but it's interesting, and also for me, I think with the English, just reading a lot in the older games, with Zelda or Final Fantasy, so it's also good for learning English. I think.
Oh man, I always have had that theory that one of the factors to why my English got so well developed early on was because of my interest in video games, but also movies and music. But I remembered like when it came to other people in my school class did not really, they didn't really have the same kind of fanatic interest in video games, so they didn't really have that edge to learning English. But they were still good. But to some extent, I kind of felt that I was a little bit better. I pretty much enjoy that fact. But yeah, video games is definitely, especially nowadays with voiceovers and stuff like that. It's definitely a great tool to make it immersive and feel like you're part of that kind of reality. Even though it's fiction, but it just, makes you feel like you're part of the story.
Yeah. I mean, like, video games have gone over much more, like, on the visual side. It feels more movie-like, with actors and motion capture, and it's a whole business side of it. And it get you more immersed in the story, and I think that's a very, very good thing. But it's something different when you're, old games and you read the text, and you had to use your imagination, and you have like this 16-bit graphics, like reading a book. Like you had to use a fantasy, like for what was happening and what kind of voice that character had, and completely different thing. But it was useful growing up, I think, reading more English. And
definitely.
I used to write, I remember in English class, 5th grade or something, I used to write like fantasy stories with Link as the main character from Zelda. And like he was searching for the Master Sword and stuff like that. But it had a huge impact on me, absolutely, with gaming growing up. And it just evolving, as we say, with graphics and characters. And like today, with Final Fantasy comparison. And it's such a cool thing where we are today with what you can do. Like, you don't have the same limitations that you did before, and so with the new consoles you also have like less loading times and like almost nothing today, and you can have more open worlds, and you can like have this big building or something and you can go into every room and no loading, and like this open thing. And it's a cool place today, and it's interesting to see where we're going in the future, I think, with gaming.
So interesting with that part of history. But I was thinking about, like, when it comes to Ocarina of Time and how everything felt like, emotional and immersive, how that pretty much impacted me as a person. I remembered first time as I finished that game, I almost, I was so immersed, and that pretty much consisted of a huge part of my life quality and during those months as it took for me to finish the game. So as I finished the game, I just started to feel for a moment, what am I supposed to do with my life? Now my life is empty.
But some games feels like this empowering like feeling when you complete them, like as you said with Ocarina of Time. It's quite a, maybe not by today's standards, but back then it's quite a long game for a Nintendo 64 title. I mean, it's a huge world, true. And it takes like, if you're going to take everything, like every secret and stuff like that, you're up to almost 50 hours at least to complete it, and it feels like this epic journey at the end,
Yeah, definitely.
So it was a very cool feeling. Speaking about Final Fantasy, I still remember the first time I completed Final Fantasy VII, because I never thought I would like complete it. It was a cool game, but like, is it for me? But once you get into it and learn the battle system, and with this materia, magic, and leveling up, and you can grind up your character, and just, I still remember the day I beat like Sephiroth, and that ending, and it was so cool, and it felt like this epic journey, when you finish that game. So it can have that impact on you, absolutely, and you get, as you say, you get emotionally attached to the characters, and I also like with people who don't play games, and I say, it's like a movie or a book or something. You get to use the characters and the backgrounds, and you get involved in the story. So
yeah, I definitely understand that.
Yeah,
I can definitely relate also.
Yeah,
and another game that pretty much makes me feel like this game is something that I really emotionally invested a lot of time and effort into was the Mass Effect series, specifically given the second game in the series.
Yeah.
And there was this character in the game, Garrus.
Yeah.
I loved his voice acting to the point where I felt like, this is a real person that I felt like I was starting to care about.
Yeah,
And I love the fact that he had like this side quest in the game that he gave you, and it was like, okay, it was a very much a personal vendetta that he wanted you to, give him. He wanted you to allow him to do the specific thing, which you could say no to, I believe. But I just wanted him to be so happy with me being his captain in the game.
Yeah.
And Mass Effect 2, it pretty much had the same kind of impact as Ocarina of Time being finished. What am I supposed to do with my life now? We don't have the third game yet.
I really love the Mass Effects game. I played I think every one of them, 1 year ago on the PS5, this collection, of all the Mass Effect games. And it was very interesting to go back to the first one, and it was also a remaster of that one, so sort of, quality of life improvements and stuff like that. And also the second one is still the best, I think, as you say, like with the story and characters, and you have this ship and you're exploring the galaxy, and at the same time you get to know your crew and their stories, and you get involved in the characters. And it's also cool how the Mass Effect game works, that it takes your experiences and brings it over in the save file, to the next game.
Yeah!
So all the choices you've made, and it can have like huge impact on the upcoming game, and you have no clue when you start playing the first game, like, if I have saved that character will still be in the third game or something like that.
Of course.
So it's very cool with those role-playing games, I think, that have consequences for your actions. And that's cool with characters, like you say with Garrus, like you get to know them, and then you think, what's the best decision for that character? And that's how
exactly.
well written it is. It's so well written that you get to feel of the different characters in the game. So Mass Effects are really, really good. And we haven't had that, sadly, after. I actually like the third one as well. I know many complain about it, but I liked it. I think it was very cool, very epic end to the fight. And they patched it afterwards, the ending. Now we have a more complete ending to the game.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's very nice of them after like 80 plus hours or something. Did you play Andromeda, Mass Effect Andromeda? I've never played it.
I gave it my alt. It was my main primary game to play for a couple of months, but given the fact of how many bugs and it was just a major turn off, so I just felt like, no, I'm not doing this. I gave up halfway through. I just watched the video reviews on YouTube, and like you said, all the bugs and the graphics, and like, oh no, this is not Mass Effect, like with these qualities. It's like, so we haven't had a proper sequel, but it's one in the works, right? I do believe, yes.
I've seen some poster of it, like it's under development or something. I
haven't really read upon the news about it, whether they have announced if this new game in the works is supposed to be like a sequel or a spin-off. So that remains to be known, and I'm definitely looking forward to getting more news about that, because I just felt so amazing. And the third game, I played it when it was a new game on the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and the PC too, of course. But I played it on the PS3. No, wait. I played on the PC, and I definitely didn't mind the ending too much. I didn't love it, but I was kind of okay with it. So I'm very much interested to play it yet one more time.
Yeah.
Which I guess I would have, forced myself to play through the entire trilogy, which I guess I wouldn't mind. It's just I need to, put the other games aside that I want to play for now.
Yeah. So many games, so little time.
Oh, yes.
No, but it is commitment in those big games. It takes a long time to complete the whole series like that, especially Mass Effect. I hadn't played it in so many years. We were turning to it last year, and then when I was in it playing it the first, second, and third, and I was like, oh, I should play this way more often than I do. It's so good. It's still so good. Why do I play all the other new games? They suck. This is really good. This is really good. No, but it's sometimes it's good to go back to those classics.
Yeah, of course. Classics it really makes you feel like why it's an actual classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
what makes a classic and all that.
Yeah.
I was thinking of this one thing, has there been certain classics that you felt like, okay, other people has been talking about this game a lot throughout the years, but you have actually missed playing this, maybe because you haven't had the console or a PC to be able to play the game?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked about it before, for the Diablo series, for example, those are those great classics as well that people love and have these fond memories of. And I've never owned a gaming PC. I remember friends playing them, and I remember watching the games with friends as they play them on the computer. And these are cool, sort of spooky feeling. The first one, in this city, this small town, and Tristan is called Tristan, the city.
Yeah, Tristram.
Yeah, and this special atmosphere. I thought it was really cool. But no, I've never been able to play them afterwards. But so those are classics that I missed. I know. But I have more options today, at least. Now they're re-releasing. The second one was re-released, and the third game is on basically every console as well. So it would be cool to go back to it. I would also love to play, if you want to call them classic, I don't know, but like this, I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, and they have this Shadow of Mordor games, 2 games, supposed to be really good adventure games with also some sort of strategy to them, and never played them. Yeah, they look amazing, also seeing friends play them, and I really have to try these games, but never gotten around to it. But maybe later, but I don't know if I have like that big classic, for example, if I've never played Halo, for example, but missed one of those big games. I don't know if I have those really, but I was some series I've been late to, if you want to call it that, like
I understand.
the GTA series, Grand Theft Auto. I've started playing them in the 4th game, so I missed San Andreas, and all those classics. So I've started playing number 4, and I really love number 4. It's still my favorite, number 4.
I see.
Because it's more I just like the story and the character, and Nico Bellic, the main character, I really liked him as a main
he's
character.
very memorable.
Yeah, and good voice actor there as well, and just exploring Liberty City, driving around, and for the time the graphics felt very realistic, and I could just do so much in this sandbox world, So, but I still haven't played the old ones. I know the re-release, the remaster. Speaking of remaster, was supposed to be really bad last year. I think it was the mobile version, the mobile game version. They released for console, so the graphics looked so bad, and they had to patch it, and I still don't think they look very good. So, Do you have any big games that you have missed out on, or?
Yeah, I remember a lot of people has been talking about this. I believe it's Xbox exclusive Fable series.
Because
I never played any of them.
No, me neither.
But I've also heard I believe there have been a couple of years going by as we heard the announcement from Microsoft that they have been working on either. I don't know, some spin-off, or maybe it's a remake, I don't know. They've just been saying okay, we have a Fable game in the works, and I've just been hoping that it's the first game from the Xbox original.
Yeah.
I felt like it's a little bit hard for me to get back to that version, because I believe the second one is an Xbox 360 title, and it feels like, that kind of graphics is okay for me. But Xbox original with that kind of game, because I do believe that there are RPG elements in that game, I'm not really sure if I want to invest myself in that kind of game, despite it feels like it's a good one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I never played them as well, but also heard like people really looking forward to a new one. What's a new Fable game? And as you say, it's not so easy sometimes to go back to games like older games, as they can be like constructed in a completely different way, and you have like. It's hard to direction to where you're going with the story and what you're supposed to do. Like we talked about the earlier Final Fantasy games today, and it's so open sometimes, and where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do, and maybe you can save at certain moments, but it's harder generally. Older games are much harder to play and complete. Some of them, so it's not easy sometimes to go back to classic, and normally you remember it as looking way better than they do. I mean, you have like this memory of, this looks so good, it was amazing when I played this game, and then you go back to it and like, okay, it has aged somewhat,
and given the fact that we spoke of GoldenEye before, as we have it feels like a remaster, even though it's pretty much just a port with better textures. Or resolution, I should say, for the Switch and the Xbox.
Yeah.
I just feel like, the original on the Nintendo 64, since we played that through CRT pretty much, a thicker television with, the resolution, what was it, 240p, I believe it's called, and it just pretty much looked okay given when it was made for the TV it was supposed to be played on mainly. But now, having it being played in 4K as I do on the Xbox Series X, what makes it ugly is even uglier now. Because all the textures are even more sharper.
Yeah.
So, I pretty much just, as I played the game and I didn't really focus on, shooting people and, being really immersed in the gameplay, I just, looked at the credits, I just looked at all these 3D models of soldiers and Bono and the villains.
Yeah.
And they all pretty much look like, okay, they have some sort of a symptom, like, okay, something is blinding them, or they can't breathe because they look like, oh my god, I'm in pain.
No, it's true. It's some memorable faces in GoldenEye, I think. Yeah, that's true. No, but it's true. Like, and I think that's the job of the publisher. Like when they're re-releasing the game, that they should like go back and tidy up a bit, like fix the graphics a little bit. We'll make this look a little bit nicer. We can fix this and do that, and so that's why I'm so glad that game is out now. But at the same time, it's sad that it's been such a low effort on the part of releasing them again. Like
that definitely shows.
Yeah. Compared to same sort of game like Perfect Dark that I really loved as well on Nintendo 64. But the version out now on Xbox is amazing, I think. And you and we played through the campaign on co-op, and it feels good with the Xbox controller, and the graphics, looks good for. I mean, polished them a bit. It looks better now, and it is sharpness, and it looks like a more remastered like version, or a HD remaster at least. Yeah. And I think that's the minimal effort if you're going to release that old game.
Course.
So I think sad.
On a side note regarding that game, I remembered you said this to me once when it was like, we played through that game and we were on one of the later levels in the game, and the environments started to get sort of more darker, and given the fact that there was more, color contrast in that game, some of these darker areas had more visibility.
Yeah,
so it felt like, true. How were you even able to play the game in its original form on the Nintendo 64? Because it was so dark.
Yeah. Perfect dark, yeah.
Perfect dark. Pun intended.
Pun intended. No, but it's true. You can have those changes as well, but it's very cool going back to Metroid Prime again. That remake came out last week, and when they redo like environments, and they can change the lighting in the remaster, so you get more moody and more atmospheric and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. But it's up to the developer and as they're going to re-release it, how much effort. I mean, everything costs money, of course. Like, but if this game that has this culture following, like GoldenEye, of course you should spend more money on it to really, release it in this best possible way. And I'm very glad that we have it, but at the same time, I feel like, oh, come on, you could have done so much more with this.
Yeah, of course. And I kind of still hope that they would do, take some effort into, really doing some kind of visual updates to it. Because, sound I don't complain about generally.
No.
But I would definitely have something being done about the visuals. Because it's still a little bit too blocky. Nintendo 64 graphics and today's era definitely doesn't look the best.
No, that's true. That's so true.
So I would guess that this could be the end of our first pilot episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fun just sitting here talking video games. It's nice, I think.
Oh yeah, it's been so amazing. So, I've totally enjoyed this.
Yeah, and this was the first episode. We just talked more openly about gaming experiences, and other episodes we're going to have a focus on maybe a certain topic, or whatever, or maybe just a certain game or a game series.
Yeah, sure.
We have certain ideas for it, so yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
So how do the people say it? Like, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Thank you so much for listening to us ranting about games, and we're going to talk to you again soon.
Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye for now.